Now to Bill 90.
Bill 90 amends Chapter 2, Article 25, Section 2-139 of the Hawaii County Code 1983, 2005 edition as amended, relating to awarding of contingency relief funds to nonprofit organizations. Repeals the process of awarding grants from the District Contingency Relief Fund to nonprofit organizations. Introduced by Mr. Onishi, approve FC 75.
Can I have a motion to approve Bill 90?
Move to approve Bill 90.
It's been moved by Mr. Onishi. Second by Ms. Willie. Mr. Onishi.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to clarify some of the concerns that some of the council members had on about this eliminating nonprofits, and I just want to give a couple examples of how this would work. And one would be where like a monument wanted to be built at the Veterans Cemetery. So what would happen is the funding, the council member would give the funding to Parks and Rec, and Parks and Rec would purchase all the materials that would be needed to build this monument, but the labor would come from the volunteers. So that way we still have, I guess, the transparency, but also accountability of where the money is going and how it's being spent. Another example would be, say, there's a coqui frog problem in an area, and you have this nonprofit group that wants to do eradication. So what the process would be is the council member would give the money to R&D, to their ag section. They would buy the poison. The nonprofit would go and lease or rent, to go and, I guess, get the sprayers from R&D at no cost, and R&D would then give them the poison to spray, to eradicate the coqui frogs. And so everything would be accountable, because if we get the nonprofits just come directly to us, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where the money is going. We don't know how they're spending it. But this way, by having it done through the departments, like I said, and it was mentioned that the departments wouldn't do it. I've never seen a department not do it. They always help the council member out in getting their funds or getting the projects done. Okay, so by saying that the departments had hold that things up, I never seen that before, and I want to make it clear that it never happened in my term, my years on the council. Okay, so I'm still asking support. I want to have it where, that to me would be more accountable, more transparent, and that way it would take out the politics too of having nonprofits coming to everyone and trying to tap off. The last thing that I want to mention too was that it was mentioned about being micromanaging. I've seen in the past council members, and not this council right now, but previous councils, trying to micromanage the administration and also the departments. So by saying that this is going to micromanage us, I've seen it where council members are trying to micromanage the departments and the administration, how they're spending their money. So you can't have it only your way. Okay, it has to be working both ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Willie.
I do have
your
an
mic on?
amendment, but I want to...
Could you put your mic on?
Okay, there. I think that there are a lot of legitimate concerns both ways, and I just want to say my interest is seeing if we can work out something that we're all comfortable with and not having it come down one way or another. I think Councilmember Kern expressed a lot of the things that I was concerned about in terms of weighing these and how we do that. And I think the stress on that this is supposed to be a county-related public purpose and the need for more accountability and how to measure success was one of my reasons supporting this. I do feel I am concerned about cutting out the issue of where there are some groups that I've already discussed with and somewhat committed to, and I was trying to figure out how I would maneuver those funds to get it to them if they are a nonprofit or work with the department. So I think that it is difficult, and I think we have a choice. We can allow for the use of nonprofit, we can prohibit it, we can do what Chair Yoshimoto suggested, maybe a compromise, allowing the nonprofits that didn't receive grant and aid funds, or we could do it, say, a percentage, no more than a certain percentage. So I do have, I did draft up an amendment, and I'm not sure I want to get into discussion of that before anyone wants to speak on this issue generally. Again, I would like to see us come together on this and not in a way that we feel that it would work either where it's not for nonprofits, but we clearly feel, say in the example like that Councilmember Eoff spoke, and that's similar to the situation I have. How do we do that where it's not, we're not going to hit a roadblock? I also may not have, don't necessarily have the experience and ability dealing with the department. Councilmember Onishi, and maybe sometimes I want to do something that's a little bolder than the departments have maybe used to. And I think here it is each council member has direct responsibility. I don't particularly like seeing the department head has to approve and the mayor has to approve whatever project we write up. So what I'm really saying is there are a lot of issues here. I'd like to hear what other people have. I do have an amendment that I've written up based on what Chair Yoshimoto, and he wasn't here when it came up, so I wanted to sort of hold this till he was back here. And second, what I put in is more accountability, like including having to not just state what the...
Excuse me, Ms. Willie. Until you introduce your amendment, we should just stick to the Bill 90.
So let's, I'm going to yield. I'll speak more, but I just wanted to give my general approach here, and I'd like to hear what others have to say.
I think Ms. Poindexter asked to be recommended.
Okay. And thank you for the explanation, Councilmember Onishi, because that was my main concern. I know the last time that I spoke, I was looking at some nonprofits who had like private roads, and they just had the workshop. So the two examples that I used the last time was poor examples, but because I know that we cannot fund anything in like private, like private owned property or whatever through nonprofits to fix their roads. I think I was talking about roads repairs and things like that the last time. So the Coqui Frog issue hit home for me too, because I know that I have been approached to help in an area that Margaret and I share, the Waimea area, and that their problem with the Coqui Frog, and they're been unable to raise the kind of funds they need for to help eradicate. So hearing that, kind of calms me a little bit on how the contingency funds are used. And I like working with the department in getting the project done and not just doing it on our own and what we want as council members and just going out of the box, because I think we need to work together to make it better and not go off track. They help guide us in areas that we're not familiar with. So I like working with the departments and the administration in making sure that we do it in a Pono way and the right way with our community. So I thank you for the explanation, because that kind of helps me a lot in the decision that I'm going to make. After hearing that, I just got to say I'm leaning towards supporting it now, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to hear like what Ms. Eoff said the last time about the example that she gave about the veteran cemetery. So that clears that up too. So thank you for the explanation.
Ms. Ford. Thank you. Well, I still cannot support this bill as it is written, and the reason is, we've been given a amount of money for each one of our districts to help the people of our district, or the people of the island if we were to get involved with a project. But what Mr. Onishi is describing are really wonderful projects, and I've done many of those in my own district where I've funneled the money through Parks and Rec. Usually it winds up being Parks and Rec, and we do a project inside one of the parks by buying the material, and then we have a community, wonderful community groups that come together and fix the project. But those aren't the only types of projects that nonprofits take care of that need help. And I'm going to specifically talk about medical issues. We don't have a medical department here, a health department on the island. And while we'd all like to believe that the State Department of Health is wonderful and does everything in the world, that is not the reality. I'm personally involved at this point in time in a vaccination clinic. We're moving around my district. Right now the vaccine is free, but after September 21st it will not be free. It's a vaccination called Tdap, tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis. Pertussis is whooping cough, and we've had it in Ocean View, and we've had it in South Kona. Unfortunately, the reporting has not been what it should be to the State Department of Health, but the fact is, it is going around there. My goal is to get as many people vaccinated who want to be vaccinated. I'm not pushing anybody who doesn't want it, but I'm making this vaccine available, and I'm working with the Kona Community Hospital and the nurses up there, specifically a nurse practitioner, and opening these clinics around the island. We did Tropicare, which we brought in the military to do medical, dental, and optical services. Now, if I needed to provide any kind of supplies to the military for my district, this would prohibit me from doing it. I could not give any medical supplies if they were in excess of what the military could bring in. For instance, I can't think of something right now, but if I needed to do blood testing, which the military didn't do, and I needed supplies for that, this would stop me from doing that through a nonprofit, specifically the hospital or somebody else. And that's my objection to this. It's not just about doing the projects, CIP projects inside of a county. It's about what needs are out in the community that we might be able to help with. And I mentioned it the last time, I'm going to mention it again because I think Jay wasn't here, was that Angel Pilago and I jointly gave $90,000 to cover the medical examinations and treatment of children in the South Kona area. We donated that to the West Hawaii Community Health Center, completely outside of the county. They actually got federal and state money and remodeled the building and put in all the equipment, and then our $90,000 was actually used to treat the children whose families could not afford dental care, much less insurance for dental care. And that clinic now handles not just dental, it expanded almost immediately into medical and behavioral services for the children of our district. That's the kind of programs that we can help with if we don't have the restriction that Mr. Onishi is recommending. I have an extremely poor district. The biggest need in my district besides water is medical services, medical and dental services. And I cannot help the poor and needy in my district if this bill passes in this manner. The compromise that I would be willing to make is that if you want to restrict the nonprofits who receive this money to nonprofits who did not get grant in aid, that is the money from the $1.5 million, I'll go for it. I think that's fair. Although there are some nonprofits that applied through that process and didn't get any money that I would like to support because, once again, they're providing services to the poor and needy and unhealthy in my district. I have a huge incidence of diabetes and heart disease in my district, and we need to get some services down there, and the only way I can do it is basically on a clinic basis or mobile basis on an occasional basis. This bill prohibits me from helping those most needy in my district, and it'll prevent you from helping the people in your districts too. I'm willing to make that one compromise, but as this is written, it basically says the mayor has given us this money, and with the other hand, you can only spend it inside of the county. I don't have a problem spending money inside the county, but I do have a problem not being able to spend some outside of the county. Please, either amend this bill or kill it. Thank you.
Mr. Kern? Mr. Yoshimoto?
Thank you, Mr. Kern. my pleasure. I mean, you have a lot of experience here. You've dealt with the contingency funds as well. And, I'm just trying to get I have quite a bit to say, but I wanted to hear what you had to say.
Okay. It's a good discussion. In the past, this is just some perspective here. In the past, while we utilized contingency funds, I did have some concerns about certain expenditures that were requested by council members. I'm just being really straight up front with that. But I don't recall any request of a council member to expend contingency funds ever being denied on the council floor. I could be wrong, but okay, so I'm correct. So it was never denied. So we basically left it up to council members to just use their discretion in making sure that the funds were expended for a county purpose. So in listening to the discussion today, and reviewing what happened last time, which I did, the question becomes, how do we set parameters to make sure it's a county purpose? So, like, for example, what Mr. Onishi is saying, when you get the approval through a particular county department, I mean, that's kind of like a vetting process, a review process to make sure that it meets that county purpose, right? So when I hear Ms. Ford's comments about providing for, say, dental care and things like that, so the question becomes, well, is that a county purpose? Would a county department, spend money on that particular event or need, right? And so then we think about state jurisdiction, what they do, and we've all come across situations where the state has basically dropped the ball and not funded certain things. So the contingency funds helps us, where there's shortfalls and things like that. But I do think we do need to set some parameters and controls, tighter controls, because I think the process as it is now, it's wide open. And while technically speaking, we could just vote things down if we feel like it's not a county purpose, absent an opinion from the department or corporation council that says, hey, this is clearly not a county purpose. I don't know that the council would do that. Well, I don't know, right? Because this is a new council too. The last time we just pretty much said, okay, this is important to you, we'll support you, and I think we've done that. I think there's some people who voted no in the past, but nothing's ever failed. So to answer the question, I do believe we need to set parameters. I don't know which is the best idea, because again, my question now would be, hearing Ms. Ford's concerns would be to Mr. Onishi, is whether as drafted, would she still be able to do the things she wants to do? So maybe Mr. Onishi, Madam Chair, if I may direct a question to Mr. Onishi. Mr. Onishi, you heard Ms. Ford's concerns about wanting to continue to do the things she's done in the past with her contingency funds. Under your scenario, what would happen?
Hello? Okay. I just wanted to ask Madam Chair, is that because she was in charge of the nonprofits, right? And I want to find out if hold on here. If the West Hawaii Health Center had come in front of the nonprofit, the task force, asking for some money, do you remember?
In this last fiscal year? I don't think so.
Because, Ms. Poindexter, maybe you can answer.
I thought I recalled. I know the Hamakua Health Center came. The Hamakua Health Center came, and I understand that, because can I just summarize something?
Okay.
Because if I remember correctly, in the committee discussion, it was because that should be, the nonprofit should apply at our county grant during that opportunity. And I think West Hawaii Community Health Center got funded, and also Hamakua Health Center got funded for the dental program. So they did come forward to help, and a lot of, and what I want to say is, because I know I work for the FQHCs, which are the federally qualified health centers, and they are reaching out to rural communities. Their primary focus and their mission is uninsured, underinsured, and your Medicare, Medicaid population. That's their target population. So I would encourage all our council members to work closely with the FQHCs on our island, because they are trying to reach that population. That's what their priorities are per. So when we talk about not having medical and all, I would like to say that we do, but we have to work with the federally qualified health centers. So anyway, on the, I think they did reach,
Okay, but,
they did get money.
No, okay, okay, no. And so I'm going to answer Mr. Yoshima's question, is that, yes, well, the contingency funds would be basically for, I'm mentioning is county-related projects or programs, okay, or events. There is an avenue for nonprofits to come and get money, and that's through the Hawaii County nonprofit grant process, right? And so, like I mentioned earlier at the last meeting, how I feel is that we should be increasing that fund from 1.5 maybe to like 2.5. That way we can get more of the nonprofits, because we have over like 100 nonprofits that come and apply, and we don't have enough money, right? So by having this contingency fund, so now because they didn't get here, now they're going to come to here. Whereas I think we should fund the projects here, or the money here, so that way we can relieve the contingency funds to a separate.
So, I think I said before, or
yeah, but
okay. So the answer is,
yeah. Well, like I said, it would have to be a county-related program, project, or event.
so that would depend on whether the program or event that Ms. Ford had mentioned
can be tied in within the counties.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Curtin had the floor.
I do. I still haven't really got your, I guess tighter restrictions, or...
Okay, Madam Chair, if I may respond to Mr. Curran. Okay, I believe tighter restrictions is one option. Otherwise, the other option would be, if we continue to do it the way we did, basically the council will be responsible for appropriating, what's appropriate, right? And in the past, like I said, if that's any indication, council seems to be reluctant to vote down any appropriation for whatever reason. My guess is for fear that theirs would be shot down if they voted no. I don't know. And so there was this almost unspoken respect given to each council member's discretion as far as what they feel is appropriate. So that's one approach, if we just continue doing what we're doing. Another approach is Mr. Onishi's approach, which is to put in tighter controls, right, which makes it a brighter line as far as the county purpose. There's pros and cons to both. I mean, because I think, under that scenario, it sounds like Ms. Ford's situation would not be able to get funding. That would be my guess. But, yeah, so.
Madam Chair, may I respond to some of these comments about what I said that are really off base here?
Okay, Ms. Ford.
Thank you. Thank you for granting me the latitude. First of all, I am not giving any money from the contingency funds to the West Hawaii Community Health Center. I used that as an example years ago when Mr. Palaga and I were on the council together to get a keiki clinic started. I have no plans to do that at this time. But there are nonprofits that are outside of the county that are not the West Hawaii Community Health Center that deal with health issues, and I'm just using health as an example. There's many other types of nonprofits out there that do other kinds of wonderful work in the community. But the point is that Mr. Onishi wants to restrict this money to inside the county for something that's going to be done in the county. And the confusion, I believe, is it a county-related project? Well, I got to tell you, if we get a massive outbreak of whooping cough around here, we're going to have a massive county project going on in state and federal government. We're going to have it. Can I stop that? No. I can only do my little tiny bit, which I'm willing to do. I'm just using that as an example of the kinds of things outside. Now, I didn't just make that up and say, screw the county, I'm going to do this all on my own. I first had to go to Corporation Council and get the blessing of Corporation Council. Then I went to, there's no department for health services here. I then went to the office of the mayor. Mayor Kim has been so gracious in allowing those types of things to go through the office of the mayor and dispense those. And I have always requested, I think I've always requested, that they have to give us a summary statement and the bills and show us how they expended the money. Now, that's just what I do. Do we need to tighten up the controls on this stuff? I think we do. I think they owe us a report just like the grants and aid owes us a report. But that doesn't mean that we should stop doing what we need, because everything that fails at the state or the federal level winds up on our doorstep, and then the mayor's office, and we get called, what are you doing about X? And the fact is, unless we have the ability to target these funds in some strategic areas, we won't be able to do anything about X. Thank you.
Ms. Lewis?
I still have the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's what happens when you ask a couple questions. Yes. Okay, I'm sitting on the fence with this one. This one's really tricky. After making the last vote that I made to support it, I sat back and was like, man, this is tough, because I feel as elected officials we're here to make, you know, decisions that affect our community, and it's sometimes it's a shade of gray or 2 degrees of separation, and you can't necessarily put it into that category as county, but it is for the county. I understand the concept of the checks and balances as council, but not necessarily the council's probably most likely gonna go with it as it's done in the past. So I've just, like I said, I've been sitting here, and I think there should be some type of balance in this, because we're accountable to our constituents, and they're going to see how we spend the money. And if they don't like the way that we're spending the money, you know, they're going to tell us. I wish I had I wish I could see how it really worked in the past. But just to give a nonprofit the money and not have specific reporting like we do in the grant and aid, I feel is a potential problem, because we do need the accountability, we do need the transparency. I feel that I don't like tying our hands. I like to have flexibility. I like, as individuals that we are, to be able to make choices that we need to make for our community. So like I said, I'm really sitting on the fence. I agree with Mr. Yoshimoto on maybe trying to find some tighter controls for that, some tighter reporting. But nonprofits are important, and for me, I don't have any problem if there's 10, 20 nonprofits that come and knock on my door, and I can say no. I can say yes. I don't have a problem with that. I don't want to make this about being political. I want to make this about what's the right appropriation of these funds for our community and the people in our community that desperately need the help. That's what I want. And I'm always, I tend to think more tangible. So when I was first thinking about it, park benches, pathways, speed bumps, whatever that's going to be there in 10 or 20 years. That's the way I think, but that doesn't mean that everybody needs to think that way. I feel that we do need the flexibility. I'm on the fence with this, having a hard time. I almost think we should somehow come up with a few different options for compromise. I know there's one coming forth from Ms. Willie. I would like to almost ask Mr. Yoshimoto to see what type of, because you three that have been here the longest have a better understanding of how this worked in the past. And maybe Mr. Yoshimoto could come up with a few suggestions on that as a possibility, not to put you to task. So I'd like to hear everybody else, but I'm really on the fence. I just want this to work and give us the right flexibility that we do need, with the controls that we need and the accountability and the transparency, but to give us the ability to help our communities in the best possible way we can.
Madam Chair, let me respond to Mr. Kern's comments, since we're directly on point. I can tackle that, Mr. Kern. I'd be willing to do that if the council believes that the present options are not, or they want more options, I guess, maybe the better way to put it. Because, one thing to comment on is we will be approached by nonprofits and things, and sometimes uncomfortable in saying no, right? And so I think when I think back at the process, and I think each council member, or Ms. Ford and Mr. Onishi, can all probably share stories about having to say no, and then sometimes getting whatever sorts of pressure that we do get, and we do get it, whether it's straight up veiled or whatever you want to call it, right? And it makes for an uncomfortable situation. So that's why having the controls, I think, helps us. Whether it's, I do have ideas actually in thinking about it, but I don't have any proposal right now. So I'd be willing to work on that. But anyway, there are several options. I think Ms. Willie has something after our general discussion on this, and yes, I'd be willing to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Yoshimoto.
Thank you. Ms. Willie?
Yeah, I'd like to move to amend, okay, this would be Bill 90 with Communication 313.1.
Is there a second?
I'm going to need one too.
Pardon me, yes. Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Willie, second by Ms. Ford, to amend Bill 90 with the contents of Communication 313.1. I'm going to have to take a 5-minute recess, or...
Can I say something before you recess?
Okay, Ms. Willie?
I just want to separate two questions. One, nonprofits yes, nonprofits no, or those that weren't funded, and sort of that question. And the second question being increased accountability in the bill. So I just want, trying to say there's really, I see two issues here, and I'd like to focus.
I think I'm going to ask for a 10-minute recess so people can read this amendment, and then we can probably...
Can we get some copy?
Pardon me?
Can we get some copy? I don't have one.
A copy? Okay. Yeah, I believe it should be in your pink folder. You have it?
This is the resolution.
She has an amendment to the resolution, but she also has Communication 313.1, which amends the bill.
Yeah, got it.
You have? Okay. If everybody has it, then we'll take a 10-minute recess. Bring this meeting back to order, and Ms. Willie has the floor.
Yes, and can I discuss the bill and the resos sort of together? I mean, no? I mean, like, this is all related, in my view. But
Well, at this time, we're just discussing your proposed amendment to Bill 90, so if you could keep it to that as much as possible.
Yep. So let me make sure I'm looking at the bill when, okay, Bill 90.
And your Communication 313.1.
Yes. Okay, so if you look at page 2, basically this is a compromise, or one aspect is to clarify that these funds may be, A is all new, A under 2 is all new, and saying that they can be used for a county-related public purpose, okay? So just re-emphasizing that these funds are from the operating fund. But I want to say our home rule statute says what do we have, what is a county-related purpose? It says health, life, basically well-being, private property, order. I mean, it's pretty wide, you know, and that's what we're governed by, that statutory authority, that scope. So I don't feel it as limiting as some may think. And then the key thing here is the provided that nonprofit organizations did not receive grant and aid funds for the same year. So that was sort of the compromise, like putting in what Chair Yoshimoto said. If you just put a period there, we'd be back to the beginning one, or you could add the provided that no nonprofit receive any funds. That, so that's the second sentence. And then I put the consent of the involved county agencies required but shall not be unreasonably withheld. I mean, others are saying we don't need that. I'm not sure it hurts. It does say on the forums, I don't know whether any of you went to the contingency relief training session. It was sort of, you need to get the department's approval and you need to get the mayor's approval. I feel that is further tying our hands, and I felt that what the rule says and what controls is basically what I have in E here. Each member of the council has direct responsibility over his or her allocated contingency relief funds. And that may be in the charter, I'm not sure. But, so we're making a choice. Do we tie our hands and we feel better having our hands tied so we don't have to say no, or we don't have to make those hard decisions, and it's easier if we just say, sorry, that's the law? Or do we lean towards this is really supposed to be just for the county departments and we're really just supposed to be using it to help the departments? I think that's the balance there. I just want to go over the one other B, what I have in here. Then this is new. This section would be new. That what I've added here is that the resolution identify the public purpose and the overall objective. There's a nonprofit involved, and the manner in which the success of the project will be measured. I feel there isn't adequate, not sufficient accountability where you could just hand it over to, I want to give to the food basket, or I want to give to, all of these good, the Humane Society. I feel there needs to be more clear how is success going to be measured, and I also feel that we, as county members, should have more oversight of what we're doing here, where these funds are given out, even if it's through a department or to a nonprofit. And therefore, I have F, is that the council member come in and report back at some point in terms of the success. So, what I've added is number one, the question in A, whether we allow here I put nonprofits that did not receive grant and aid fund, and that was really going with incorporating Chair Yoshimoto's suggestion, and then two, adding in some more accountability. And I think those are two separate questions. I do hear Councilmember Yoshimoto and Councilmember Poindexter saying, well, there is a way around this, Margaret, and that's like through R&D, that I see that if we go with the way, just the straight no nonprofits, as Councilmember Onishi's bill it is, then can I go to R&D and say, I've got Spencer House or in Waimea Welcoming House, and this is a new nonprofit, and we're trying to do something for the organization. I've already submitted funds. Can I give them money, at least, not where I'm just handing it to them, but where it's an R&D project to assist on this? So it adds this whole other indirect step, rather than me overseeing it, what is R&D doing? I already feel that R&D and all of these departments are like overwhelmed. So those are the different issues I see. So what this bill says is it would allow not all nonprofits, but allow for those that did not receive grant and aid funds already, and adds accountability factors. So that's, let me just lastly say, I totally agree with Councilmember Kern. I really am tied, but I would like this to somehow come out where we all feel okay that the valid concerns are being legitimate, and if that means postponing it and getting Chair Yoshimoto to figure it out, I'm fine with that too.
Thank you, Ms. Lilly. Mr. Kern.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Ms. Lilly, I do appreciate the amendment and the discussion. I honestly feel like we should just postpone this right now. Mr. Yoshimoto said that he was willing to come up with some other options, and then we can look at what you have here. We can look at what Mr. Yoshimoto comes up with. Anybody else might have some other ideas. Give us a little more time to understand the impacts and implications that all this has, and then we can look at the 3 or 4 different options and choose one or create a hybrid from that. As you know me, I like to try to keep the conversation into one time so we're not fragmenting and having to repeat, and we're all very busy and a lot of things on our mind. So my personal opinion would be for us just to postpone this to the next council meeting, if that's enough time for Mr. Yoshimoto to come up with some options. And then we can have a more well-rounded discussion. That would be my personal choice, but I won't make that motion quite yet. I'll just see what anybody else has to say.
Okay, thank you. Then we are still sticking to the amendment. Mr. Onishi.
Thank you, ma'am. Sashira, can you please come up, please? Okay, I wanted Mr. Ashida to explain to the council members about the 2 different funds and what the purposes are for. Okay, because one fund, which is the grant and aid, comes separately. It's a separate line item, okay? This county contingency fund comes from the operating budget. So, Mr. Ishida, you can introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good morning. Lincoln Ashida Corporation Council. During the recess, Mr. Onishi had approached me and had asked a question concerning the differences currently between monies given to nonprofits under the county's annual grant and aid process and the use of contingency funds for that purpose. As the code is currently written, primarily, the only way county funds, government funds, can be given to a nonprofit that does not perform a county-related purpose is through the grant and aid process. As currently exists, that's the only legal mechanism for monies, our taxpayer monies, to go to nonprofits that perform functions or services that are not county-related. That process is currently exclusively within the province discretion of the council. When you think about it, the council passed that specific ordinance. You set up the task force which evaluates all the applicants. You make a recommendation. The council awards it. You have essentially exclusive control over that process. Whatever approvals are necessary by the mayor can effectively be overridden if you have sufficient votes for a veto override. So that process occurs completely within the council's domain. The history of the contingency funds, and I mentioned this to Mr. Onishi, sometimes we get caught up and people use the term discretionary funds. They're not necessarily synonymous. Contingency funds, that process was created to allow council members to ensure that there's adequate funding in their districts for shortfalls that occur within normal county budgeting. I think the last time I was up here, I talked about the scoreboard example. That is the historical reason. Now, I want to make clear that even if that is the historical reason, you're not wedded to that process or adhering to those historical requirements. You know, you as the policymakers, and I think everyone recognizes perhaps the council's most significant authority is its power over the budget, and everybody recognizes that. So that's why we're having this discussion today. But one of the things I think that's important to keep in mind is we have a very, very limited revenue source or stream. Primarily, it's the real property tax revenues and a portion of the transient accommodation tax, both of which in recent years have been under siege as a result of lower valuations as well as the state's efforts in reducing our share of the TAT. Unlike the state has taxing authority. The Hawaii State Constitution makes that clear, that the counties don't, only the state does. They essentially have the authority and power to increase revenues as they see fit based upon an ability to tax. That's why I think that the way our state government is set up, those areas of general statewide concern, healthcare is a perfect example. That's why it is a state function. Public education, it's a state function. Theoretically, the way it's supposed to work, the reason why it's a state function is to ensure that all districts on all islands are afforded the same degree of services by the state. Now, you as well as I know that in practicality and reality is not true. Even in theory, if the communities in, Ms. Ford gave an example of Ocean View, they're supposed to have the same level of health services as Hilo, as Honolulu, as Hanapepe. That's obviously not true. It doesn't work out that way in reality. But that is the theoretical reason why there's state oversight or state control over areas of general statewide concern. The two examples I gave are education and public education. Public education and health. Nothing prevents you from expending those funds in those districts for those purposes, health-related purposes, even if it's primarily a state function. One of the things issues that does come up, though, is whether, you're bailing out the state by doing that. Whether the state will take a position, well, we don't really have to afford this service because the county's paying for it, taking care of it down there. It's tough for you folks because you're on the ground as council members. It's easy for people to come literally walk into your office and see you. It's not necessarily the case for our state representatives, which is why I think your accessibility is, as Mr. Yoshimoto talked about earlier, the reason why you get these requests. And it is difficult to say no because there's no question, as Ms. Ford pointed out, there's no question there's a need. There's no question it's a great it's a great thing. It's a need. I look at it more, since you asked, Mr. Nishi, I look at it more in terms of it's tough, because you're sort of bailing out the state. Seems like our efforts should be ensuring that our constituents or our citizens are receiving their fair share of state services as they are entitled to under the state constitution, rather than us just throwing some contingency funds at it and basically bailing the state out.
Okay. So, as you look at the amendments that Ms. Willie has put in, to me, I like the format because it's like more or less how the grant in aid is processed. It's kind of like the same way, except for E, where each member of the council has directed responsibility over his or her allocated contingency funds. Really, that's not in the grant in aid. But if you're looking at this amendment, like I say, it kind of reflects back to like the non-profit, the grant in aid. So, would this be like?
You're talking about the amendment to the council rules or the bill?
To the bill.
Well, like I said, as policymakers, you can decide whether those funds are going to be, you're going to create a mechanism to allow funds, county funds, to go to nonprofits that provide non-county services.
Right.
You've already done that. That's why the grant and aid ordinance exists.
Right, correct. So, but now our contingency funds come from the operating budget, which is given by the mayor to us, right? And so that supposedly is a little bit more restrictive, correct?
Well, yeah, and I think what you're getting at right now is whether this council is taking a move to move away from the original policy intent of the contingency funds. I think that's the question that you're wrestling with right now, is you're basically taking a step in a direction of creating another fund for nonprofits to ask you for money for non-county purposes, which you can do, All I'm saying is, you asked the question about the original intent of the contingency funds. Its historical purpose was to supplement unanticipated shortfalls in county budgets that were providing for county services.
Okay, thank you. And, Councilor, to me, if we're looking at, supplying more funds to nonprofit agencies, then we should have our contingency funds just be put in to the grant in aid. But it makes more sense, because you're going to be allocating this money to the nonprofits, but you guys kind of heard what the grant in aid is all about and what the contingency funds are all about, and the contingency funds come from the operating budget. Thank you.
Ms. Ford?
Thank you. Mr. Ishida, will you come back, please? Let me make a comment about the words, the historical definition that Mr. Ishida is providing. I agree with that. However, I don't agree that that's the only reason. I do agree, again, that we can change the policy. But the policy in the last 8 years has been that contingency funds could also be used for nonprofits. And I can read some off for you. But I think there's a difference in definitions here. We need to clear this up before anyone writes any more amendments. County-related project, what does that mean? Mr. Onishi has defined it, I believe, as something that turns out to be tangible. That means it's physical. The county owns it. No matter how we got it built, the county owns it. I look at it as something more than that it is county-related if it impacts the people of the island. And that's where Ms. Willie commented that our purpose as a county is public health, safety, and welfare. That's why I mentioned the things. And I can go through a list here of projects that don't even come close to being, quote, hitting the definition of Mr. Onishi. I don't want to do that, but I can. But Mr. Lincoln Shida, I've asked up here because I would like you to talk about county-related and definitions. And I know there is no hard and fast, but please try.
The historical definition that we've used for county-related has been if a county department is currently providing that service. And that's how the whole contingency fund process came about, why the monies were given to the districts, so that council members could transfer these monies into departments to supplement shortfalls that the departments were experiencing. So the definition, for example, I think the best way to do it is definition. Ms. Ford, did you mention dental care earlier today?
Yes.
Was that last time?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as far as I know, I think we all agree there's no county department that provides dental care. So historically, that would not be a permitted, when I say permitted, that was per the council rules purpose, because no county department supported it. So I think I've sort of defined it by example, and I think that's the best I can do. I don't think we've ever, I don't think the term county-related was defined anywhere in your rules or the code. I don't believe, I might be wrong, but
I think you're right.
I don't believe that it was ever spelled out, but that has been the practice. But one comment to what Mr. Yoshimoto said earlier, Ms. Ford, is that there has always been this, the reason I really like the contingency fund program is it creates a lot of work, though, for the staff of the county, extra work. But the reason I like it because it's a real excellent way for the council and the administration to cooperate and interact. And I've actually, there's been creativeness some which perhaps some may argue went a little too far, but others that I think have been really appropriate and have really helped the people of our island. That sort of was a departure from the traditional original purpose of the contingency funds, but it's had significant benefit. But I cannot define it any more than that. County related, just look at it this way: it's whatever program a county department currently has, that's county related. If they don't have a program or don't offer a service, that's not county related.
All right. So then, let me give you some examples. There's a youth development program that gave money to youth born and raised in a certain area of the island to participate in ocean-related activities. Now, the ocean is owned by the state, out to, 3 miles or 12 miles. And in this case, it was a one-man and six-man canoe paddling. That does not fit within anything that we have in the county because we don't own the waters of the coastal waters.
Well, I'm not familiar with that particular one, if that's an old request or not, but just from you telling me that, I mean, I might be wrong, but I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah.
Because P&R, that could fit under an umbrella of P&R.
P&R does not control the coastal waters of the state. We have no control over it.
Yeah, I understand that, but still
All right.
Yeah.
And then there's another one here giving money to an educational group that runs a Hawaiian Cultural Learning Center. We don't seem to have any programs that I know of inside the county for Hawaiian cultural activities, unfortunately. There's another one to conduct ocean safety classes for youth. Again, I applaud that because I'm a former lifeguard. When I look at the ocean, I say that's not a Parks and Rec function.
Ms. Ford, what are these old requests?
Yeah.
That were approved or denied?
Oh, gosh, yes, these are all done, and they're all worthy projects, in my opinion.
They're all in effect right now? I mean, they were
from
all
the
passed.
time period, yeah. Then there's...
by the way, I don't disagree with any of those.
I'm not challenging the rightness of these things. Then there's one to the Hilo Medical Center Foundation to develop capabilities of volunteerism, community education, and financial support. That's really outside of the county.
Yeah, those guys hit us up for money all the time on their own.
I understand.
We don't need to give them our
But
money.
you know what? It's a good thing they do. So then there's Project Grad, Stop Drinking on Graduation Night in bunches of schools. There's an after-school program. That's it seems like the state ought to be doing that one. There's the Kamehameha Festival for food, entertainment, cultural presentations, art and craft booths, and alcohol-free. I don't know that really quite fits into Parks and Rec. Okay, I'm not going to go on. These are the kinds of really excellent projects that we should, in my opinion, we should be changing our policy, if that's what it takes, to allow these kinds of projects. And Mr. Nishi, they're all yours.
And
they're wonderful projects. I have no challenge to them. So why shouldn't Mr. Onishi be allowed to contribute to these types of projects that is doing a wonderful job in his district to help his people? That's all I'm saying. I'm saying just because county related, we need to redefine county related and go back to Ms. Willie's comment that county purposes for public health, safety, and welfare.
Can I make one comment
Yes,
on that,
sir.
since you brought that up? Be careful about defining things, because I know that sometimes we think we define things in an effort or with the idea that we're trying to make it clearer, but we sort of box ourselves into...
I understand. And, we all know I'm not an attorney. I don't know how to state that legally to make us not box ourselves in. I totally understand what you're saying. All I'm trying to say is that when we do these amendments, somehow we've got to extend the written policy to fit the reality of the policy that we have been working on for the 8 years that I've been here, and continue to support worthy projects that have nothing to do with the County of Hawaii.
And along those lines, if I just may add, I think that process is in place because you as the 9 members are the gatekeepers.
Yes.
You decide as it's brought before you, your collective, experiences, wisdom, can decide decide, is this something that, and I think given that wiggle room, not having a firm definition of county related allows you that wiggle room. I just want to
Okay,
add that.
I accept that we need the wiggle room and maybe we shouldn't box ourselves in. I think I got time for some of Mr. Mashida's responses though.
No, I think those
Oh, you
were your
did? All right, I'll yield.
I'm going to ask Mr. Nishi.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to respond back to Ms. Ford, what she just, and great, thank you for bringing all that up, because that's why I brought this up, to amend it, because of that situation. Because that's what happened. When I got in 2008, 2009, we had $50,000 of contingency funds, and everyone was just coming in and asking for funds. Grad nights had to give to all the different high schools for grad nights, and she just pointed out. So that's why, thank you very much for pointing all this out, and that's why I have this amendment to do away with those and have it county related. So thank you, Ms. Ford, for bringing that up.
Mr. Kern.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Shida. I want to make sure that I'm hearing this right, receiving it right, interpreting it right. The way that I've heard it is almost that this doesn't need to even, this change doesn't need to happen because some of the practices in the past should have not been happening, because right now it already states county related, which would put it into the category of the definition that you have expressed.
I'm sorry, try that again, Mr. Kern.
So the way that it currently is right now, without any changes, our contingency fund, the intent of that is to be used for county-related projects.
What I said was that was the original intent when it was legislated, okay? But the way that it was written, I think on purpose, it was left broad and open to afford the council discretion. And because so as it is right now, you can pretty much give to nonprofits whether, and the decision of whether it's county related or not lies with the 9 of you, okay? Historically, we've said, well, how does it work? Because there's case law out there that says you cannot go hire your own people to go do the project. It has to run through the administration, because that's a basic separation of powers issue, and there's Hawaii case law on that. So that's why it had to go to a department. But even if a department didn't have a specific program in place, like for example, the water safety one Ms. Ford talked about, if it fell under the parks umbrella, parks would generally, in my experience, accept it and say, okay, it's a goal. And that's why I talked about the good working relationship between what I saw between the council and administration. It was something really positive.
Okay, thank you. I'm clear. I stand on what I've been saying. I think we should postpone it, let Mr. Yoshimoto come up with some ideas as well, and anybody else has any ideas, and put them out on the floor and figure out some type of compromise. So I move to postpone. Maybe not.
There's been a motion by Mr. Kern to postpone Bill 90 to our next council meeting. Is there a second?
Okay.
Wait.
There's no second. I think we don't.
Okay, second.
Okay. There's a second by Mr. Dexter.
That would be postponed to the next council meeting. Is that?
I believe that's August 7th.
Is that enough time for Mr. Yoshimoto?
I think the deadline has already passed,
Oh, right.
so we would have to breach our own deadline, which is possible, but
What would work best for you?
I call the chair probably be better. So if I can get done quickly, I'll try that, but if not, the next available.
Okay, call the chair.
Madam Chair.
There's been a motion to postpone to the call of chair, to postpone Bill 90 to the call of chair. It was seconded by Ms. Poindexter, and I'm asking for discussion on the postponement.
Madam Chair.
think Ms. Willie wanted, that's fine.
Okay. Two things. One, we have a motion pending on the floor, so I just want to understand the procedure. So even though we can postpone it, and there's no problem hanging like...
That motion will also stay pending.
And I agree with the postponement, I want to say that, and appreciate it. I did have one question for Mr. Ishida. I don't know whether I can go ahead with that or not.
You would probably have to ask him that in private.
Okay.
Ms. Ford?
Thank you. First of all, I want to tell you, I absolutely think we should postpone this, but I would like to have a little more discussion in front of the whole council, since we've gotten this far, that there's some issues, I think, that could be addressed in a new piece of legislation, another amendment, that I would like to see incorporated. But if we don't do it, then we all have to call Jay, which we know that's not supposed to happen, and tell him privately. So I'd like to say it in public, and then he can do what he wants, and Ms. Willie can do what she wants, if that's all right. So I'm asking for withdrawal of the postponement, allow a little bit more discussion here in the council, and then postpone it at the end. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Oliva.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also won't be supporting the postponement at this time. In the future, I will be changing my mind, but right now there are some things I wanted to talk about, the amendment that Councilmember Willie has, and that's why I won't be supporting the the postponement at this time.
So I can ask the maker of the motion to withdraw, or we can go ahead and take a vote on the postponement.
I don't have a problem withdrawing. Again, my opinion is we fragment a lot of times, and it's cost effective, and we end up having the same conversation over again when we actually bring everything in. That's my reason. So I'll withdraw my motion to postpone for now. That's fine.
Okay, the motion's been withdrawn, so we're going to take a little bit more discussion. We've already had, I believe, at least 2 rounds, but I'll give some latitude so we can get some things out on the table to consider.
Madam Chair, I still haven't voiced out my turn on the first round.
Go ahead.
May I have the floor?
Sure.
Thank you. I just want to say for the public and also to the council that my purpose of my stand is not having the opportunity to say no or use this legislation as an scapegoat. My whole stand, and the reason why I have is because I'm looking for a proper protocol for accountability. And the nonprofits do provide a niche for the services that the government, which if they were to mimic the same service, would actually spend thousands of dollars because of all the red tape that they have to go through. And the thing about this amendment, as I was reading it, there's a couple reasons I would not support it. The reason why is, again, the verbiage. There's just way too much that we don't have to actually put in here. The second thing is, when I'm looking for accountability, we already have the nonprofit grant funding process that we go through. Even though this amendment has, it will provide an annual report, it doesn't specifically have those procedures in place in this amendment. And currently our $1.5 million that, actually at least $1 million to be given out to the nonprofits, there's already a structure there. And there's an accountability where you report in. The grad night, the no alcohol-free events, those events, they can come to our nonprofit and go through that process. What I see for our contingency funds is to provide those county services that we really need help on funding. We all can agree that the county don't have enough funds to provide all the services that we can efficiently do. We lack those funds. Now we have the opportunity as council members with our contingency funds to back those services that is really deeply needed in our community. And the nonprofit nonprofits, it's not like they're blocked off or not given that opportunity. They have a option, and that option is to go to our nonprofit grant funding. And with that process, it's more accounted, the public funds that we are steward of is more accounted for. There is a report. We know what's going to happen. With this contingency fund, we won't really know what's going to happen other than after it goes through this process. There's not really that accountability. But if we filter it through the department and stick to those services, it's accounted for. There's no questions. When a nonprofit comes through, we don't have finance checking if they have their nonprofit status. That's one of the historic events that happened with a prior council member where they weren't actually nonprofits. So I would rather avoid those mistakes on our turn and our term, because one of the things that I would like to see is just that proper accountability. And I do love the fact that our nonprofits provide those services for our community that our government would not really do as well, that they can provide it better. But I also, at the same time, would want to make sure it is all accounted for, that they do provide that report, that there is that structure. And currently, it's too lax for my opinion. And for me, I would prefer, if we really want to add nonprofits to our contingency fund, I don't want to, actually I can't talk about that because it's still not on the amendment, but I just want to add one last thing on this amendment, is that I feel like, to sum it all up, I feel like there's too much verbiage on this, and I'm gonna enact to a legislation that focus more of our contingency fund to the department rather to the nonprofits, because we already have that proper protocol. Thank you.
I believe Mr. Kanuha hasn't had an opportunity to speak.
No, I haven't. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just getting way too complicated. And personally, for me, I want to see a vote on this unless this was withdrawn. But I won't be supporting these amendments. It just seems simple, you know, like if nonprofits came into our county office, I would see, and if it wasn't related, if I didn't think that it was a county-related project, I would tell them that it's not county-related. So I can give them the money or not give them the money. That's what we have that's why our rules, and I don't know if I should be even talking about that right now, but for these, I'll just stay on the amendments. I can't support the amendments right now, and yeah, that's okay. Thanks.
Ms. Poindexter?
Yeah, I'd like to just go off on what I think Lincoln had stated earlier, that the contingency funds were set up because of the shortfall in some of the departments. And I think when we went through the budgeting process, I always consistently said that I'm glad that the contingency funds are there, because it gives every district a fair chance at doing something in their district that helps that department. Like, I know I have a lot of Parks and Rec stuff that I need to do with some of the pools I've always talked about in the Hamakua area. So I agree with that, in that it makes it a fair shot for all of the districts to evenly be able to assist whatever needs to be done in their district. So I agree with that part. The reason why I also support it going through a department, because when we always talk about enforcement agencies and who's enforcing that it gets done properly or right, if we give it directly to a nonprofit, which I don't think anybody here agrees that we should give it directly to a nonprofit, because then who becomes that, who holds the accountability? I mean, you know, who's going to be in charge of, you know, reports, and so you're adding layers of more work, and adding more work means adding more money somewhere. So I think what we have in place works, you know, so I just don't like to make things more complicated, because when you make things more complicated, it's more work for the county. It's working already, because the departments already are the ones who are enforcing that the funds get used properly and for the purposes that fall within the guidelines of what it can be used per our rules or charter and all of that good stuff. So, you know, I'm okay with even how it was originally. So, but I'm supporting the postponement so that we can look at this even more. So, thank you. And I agree with Councilmember Elegant that with respect to Councilmember Willie for working so hard on putting this together to make it fair for everybody by listening to all our comments on the last committee meeting. So thank you for doing that. But I do agree that it's getting too much, a little too much for something that can be so simple on the way it was before. The paperwork is not simple. I'm not saying that that's simple, but we're complicating the matters more. So, thank you.
Ms. Ford.
Thank you. If we were to leave the code exactly as it is right now, I would be happy. We walk away, do a thing. If any particular council member only wants to give contingency money to projects that are controlled, owned, where whatever you're going to do is inside the county, that's your choice. You have a choice. But by changing the law the way Mr. Onishi's bill is, you're denying your other colleagues the choice to do what's needed in their district. And as far as, you know, shortfalls, there are shortfalls that occur. The example of the scoreboard going out suddenly is an example. But I will tell you what we find, at least what I have found. Let me speak for myself. What I have found is that instead of a department doing the maintenance that they should have done for years on a certain thing, they wait until we have contingency funds to say, oh, you want that fixed now? You pay for it out of your contingency funds, so they don't impact their budget. That's not bad planning, and bad maintenance should not fall on the county council's contingency funds. If it's going to be county related, it needs to be something that has occurred suddenly, unexpectedly, and whatever. Not that there's been a pothole in the road for the last 10 years and suddenly we have contingency funds, so now we pay to fill the hole. That's not what this is about, and that is what happens in some cases. That's the problem. So county related doesn't mean we are supposed to make up for the lack of maintenance or bad planning by some other department. On the other hand, I still tell you that you are going to be very sorry if you cut your own throats by not helping your district in some of these unusual places, as Mr. Onishi has done, as I have done, as every single council member that has ever served on the council in the last 8 years has done. If you have a problem being able to say to somebody, no, I can't help you with that. I really can't help you with that. So, excuse me, I'm still having the floor. Excuse me, I have the floor.
We're talking about the amendment.
Excuse me, I have the floor.
Ms. Ford.
We're talking about the amendment.
Okay.
Excuse me, I have the floor.
We're talking about the amendment.
Excuse me, I have the floor.
Excuse me, do you want you to recess, or can we?
No, he needs to be quiet while I
Ms.
have
Ford,
the floor.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
You can finish your discussion on the amendment, and then...
So the amendment that we have before us is trying to deal with some of the issues that we are trying to correct in here. And I think it's a laudable effort. There's a lot that I think is good. One of the things that I would like to bring up is the nonprofit. We keep saying nonprofit in here. We need, I think, to be saying nonprofit as in a 501c3, and they have to supply the document that proves they are a 501c3 in good standing. I always ask for that. There's a lot of nonprofits that are not 501s, and they don't get any money. So So we need to correct things like that in here. I have no problem as a council person providing reports, because I would demand that report from the 501c3, including where they spent the money. I do think the fact that the county's main purpose of government is public health, safety, and welfare needs to be addressed in this. But here's the big issue. The grant in aid is supposed to be for things that impact us countywide. This amendment and the bill and the code as it exists today is for us to bring it down one level, those things that impact the district. The district. That's what this is for, and each of us knows what is most needed inside of our own district. That's why we need to have a contingency fund, and why it needs to be not only county-related, that is in county projects, but it needs to be also 501c profits that can do good for the district people. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, everybody's had an opportunity to speak quite a bit, and there is a possible postponement. So, just for the sake of saving time and discussion, I guess...
Well, I just want to point of order. We've been going over about the amendment and a lot of things on my amendment, and I'd like to just quickly make a general response.
Okay. I will allow you to speak to your amendment, and then if nobody objects, I would just like to close the discussion. I haven't had a chance.
But I had a question for Ms. Willie on one of her amendments.
Okay. Would you like to ask her the question then?
Okay. The only thing, like, I look at this amendment is that in F, where the council member transferring funds for nonprofit programs, projects, or events shall submit an annual report which shall be available to the public discussing the success of the program, projects, events related to the public purpose and objects, and so on. Okay. Now, in case someone, like, terms out, who's going to do that report? If in case these council members right here doesn't get reelected, who does the report? So that's the thing, this has to be really looked at or stricken out. Okay, so that's my question to you. Maybe if you can answer, what would be the policy on that?
And, okay, first I'm going to comment on a couple other things. Let me say, I'm not wedded to this amendment. I just really was trying to introduce something. Let's try to work together on this, and taking the ideas that had come up in the previous discussion. So it was really meant as a platform, and I'm not going to, I'm very open to other suggestions. Two other things. Just one thing that keeps coming up is that if we were to do this, that sort of a suggestion that even if we don't give to nonprofits, we can still assist in some of their efforts by, say, going through R&D as a project. Okay, say for example, the Welcome House in Waimea. This is a nonprofit effort, but I'm hearing that funds could be given through R&D, say through tourism or something, that would assist and be able to provide, not salaries or not that, but that I would be able to still accomplish certain things with certain nonprofits, but there would be an intermediary step of setting it up through R&D. So I'd like at some point, I'm not asking for it right now, but a clarification on that kind of point if we start going with the original bill. Again, I do want to stress what Councilmember Kanua is saying. Do we want to be tying each other's hands? I think that's an important point, and just what one does, and we all, and leaving it up to us. And I think also I want to say some things are for our district, but also affect or help the entire county. So in terms of your question, we can modify that language in there if we want to go for some report. I sort of like having the council member come forward and report back. You're going to get it from the council person, from the entity that's providing the service, or from the department. You can ask them for a report, and we can make it that those reports come in at any time. So all of that is, I don't want to get into a discussion on how we modify that language, let's decide if there is a problem, if we want to change it with the eliminating the nonprofits or keeping them in, and how we do it. So I'm supporting the postponement, and I just wanted to clarify my position. I'm very open to all suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then, at this time, if there's no objections, I would just like to say a couple comments. And that is that I did vote against the original Bill 90 because I really didn't want us to have to limit our options. I like keeping our options open. I thank Ms. Willie for her ideas in the amendment to Bill 90. I was kind of thinking on the same lines after hearing the discussion at the previous committee meeting that we did need to tighten up how the funds are spent and possibly prohibit nonprofits who are being funded in that current cycle. But I don't really believe we need to amend the code. I think the code, if you read it, has several provisions in the event that some of our contingency money does involve a nonprofit, and now I think for the most part it doesn't need to, but if that option is there, I would like to be able to keep it there, and I think the code addresses the accountability if in that case we do involve a nonprofit. My thinking was to just amend our council rules to better state what a county-related project would mean, and maybe add language that clarified that it has to be a public purpose and a direct community benefit, and then maybe some language to prohibit the nonprofits that are in that same grant cycle, if that's the will of the council. But I think Mr. Kanuha kind of nailed it. We may not need to clutter up the code, and I think there's a lot of extra language in there that doesn't need to be there because the code already has provision for accountability. So I would suggest that we go ahead with the postponement and think about it, and as soon as it comes back, we can continue our discussion. Did you want to entertain that motion to postpone?
Yeah, I'm okay to postpone, or I'm okay to vote right now too. This is just getting so complicated, and but for the sake of process and being able to think about it, I move to postpone. Call the chair.
We have a motion from Mr. Kern and a second from Ms. Ford to postpone Bill 90. Mr. Logan?
Thank you. For the postponement, I feel like we have enough time to actually get this taken care of, and that's my reason why I won't be supporting the postponement.
Yeah, myself as well. I'm not going to support the postponement. I think we've been talking about this way too long already. Everybody's had ample time to think about what we need to do, and I think we can vote on this already instead of postponing it.
I'm on the fence too. I'm withdraw my postponement. Let's vote. Let's move.
All right, then, Madam Clerk, on communication, sorry, what number is it?
Bill 90.
No, we're on the amendment. Communication.
Amendment, yeah.
I'm going to withdraw the amendment.
Okay. The amendment's been withdrawn, so, Madam Clerk, we will ask for you to read the roll on Bill 90. We're just taking a vote on Bill 90, so...
Since it's withdrawn, do we get a discussion?
Bill 90? Oh, yes, we can continue discussion on Bill 90, I'm sorry. So the amendment's been withdrawn, and we're back to the main motion, which is to approve Bill 90.
Okay.
At first reading.
Thank you, Madam
Chair. Go ahead, Mr. Luck.
I wanted to be recognized before speaking. I just want to say I still stand on my decision on voting for the main motion. The reason why is I feel that I am not using this as a way out for the nonprofits. I can say no. I don't have a hard time saying no. The main reason why I want to support this bill is because we have a procedure for the nonprofit that has a strong accountability structure that I can support. And I want to, with my contingency funds, so this is coming from the district that I represent, I want to make sure that the services that the department doesn't have that enough funds. For example, I'm gonna give you an example, and that's with the summer fund. Let's just say that the summer fund, they have only enough money from 9 to, let's say, 1 o'clock. So then the working parents have to come back and actually pick up the kids. Well, what I would like to do is be able to provide enough funding to where it could go to 5 o'clock. So it's the whole day and help out those working families, and they don't have to come back at that time, find a babysitter, and then put it in. The strong reason why is we have accountability for the nonprofits, and for the departments, I feel like there's probably never enough to where they could fully execute and efficiently do their services that they want to provide for the community. But we, as council members, finally have the discretion to where we can choose which services, depending on the input that we get from the community, want to support and improve and to become more of the quality of service that we do want to provide for the community. So that's where I am leading, and that's where my vision is. And I feel like this bill is the bill that I want to support, and that's my stand. Thank you.
Mr. Kanuha?
Thank you, where Mr. Onishi is headed in proposing this, and I totally get it. For myself, I see a different angle, where, like I said earlier, that we as council members have that ability to filter out what is county related or not. And for myself, I want to be able to have that option of this is what is county related. And we have a process in place where it goes through the departments, it goes through the council, and if us as a council decide whether it's county, Ms. Ford might have an idea of whether it's county related, and she might propose something. And, I might, in the process, I don't know if this, Mr. Yoshimoto said it earlier, that didn't really happen. We gave kind of preference towards the council member, but if I had an objection, I'm going to state my objection if I thought that it wasn't county related or not. That would just be my opinion. And I think that's why we have these checks and balances between proposing these with the council and with the administration. So I was kind of on the fence of this, and I still kind of am, but I think that we're completely limiting ourselves to what the possibilities are with these contingency funds. So I just wanted to state that. So I yield.
Thank you. Ms. Poindexter?
Yeah, I'm kind of like on the fence too, so I'm trying to figure this out. So if the way the current, what's before us that Councilmember Onishi had submitted, so the question is, with that, you cannot go directly to a nonprofit and give money, right? Okay. And I like that because, see, I don't want to be held accountable or be the enforcement agency to oversee that. I would want it to go through a department, which, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just need to clarify, if you don't mind, that you can't anyways. Through the contingency fund process, you cannot go directly to a nonprofit.
Okay, so
it's a process that goes through a department with concurrency.
Okay, so what does this new what are you proposing that makes it different? That's what I'm getting confused about with, what are you proposing that makes it different?
Madam Chair, can I answer that question?
Go ahead, Mr.
Okay, and it's kind of like what Mr. Kanoa just mentioned. To clarify, I'm just making it more clarifying. Our code is stating that now this contingency funds is not going to be, like, you cannot be going directly, like using a department and going directly to a nonprofit for them to just use it for whatever. Okay, the way this reads going to be that it needs to go through a process, goes through a department, goes to like a nonprofit, but it's a county-related project or program or event, and that's what it is.
Okay, so that answered my question. So now when Councilmember Willie talked about the Spencer House, because I too want to support the efforts of the nonprofit in Waimea that are trying to build capacity for networking, and if the research and development is a part of that project, then we could go through that, through research and development.
Madam Chair, can I answer that again?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so you would go through Research Development Department, but then also going to tourism, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Right. That's what you do. Like for the Cookie Frog, you would go through Ag. And they would be the agency that would get the funding from you, from your district contingency funds, and that would be provided to go get the whatever they need, the pesticides or whatever, to help eradicate the Cookie Frogs.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ford?
Mr. Ishida, would you come forward, please, again? While you're walking forward, I think we still have some misunderstandings here. Mr. Ishida, would you explain to this council that we've always had to go through a department? Even I, when I gave out money for health issues, went through the office of the mayor. So you always have to go through a department to get this set. And we all, in some cases, when I use medical, I've always had to go through you. Would you explain that to the council one more time?
You went through me for medical?
Yeah, I always vet it through you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I
I want to make sure I don't do something wrong.
Oh, I thought you were giving money to Corporation Council.
Oh, hell no. Excuse me, no.
Yes, the way it's historically been handled, all of your contingency funds actually exist in one account. There aren't 9 different accounts. It's one single account where, was it 100,000 now?
It's about 98.9 or something like that.
So it's all in there, and after an approval is made by council, there's a transfer that's made from the contingency fund account to the target department for expenditure. I mean, is that what you're asking?
Yes. Okay, so in order for me to give money for a medical purpose, I have to find a department that's willing to do it. For medical, I have traditionally gone through the office of the mayor, and as I said, Mayor Kim has always been wonderful about this. Former Mayor Kim has always been wonderful. So I will give money to I give money through the office of the mayor. They cut the check, have finance cut the check, and it goes to the nonprofit to buy, as in this particular case, vaccine from the state of Hawaii, because it isn't free. Somebody has to pay for it. And then that nonprofit actually gives the injections, or, in my case, we're setting up clinics, and I have people from someplace come out and that are qualified and give injections. So that's how it works. What Mr. Onishi's bill is doing, is stopping the process of going through a department who can give some money to a nonprofit to take care of something that is not, quote, county-related, based on his definition of the word county-related. That will come to a screeching halt. You can only give money to a department for the department to do something with it, either buy materials and have a volunteer group build something, which is great, or to fix the pothole that they haven't fixed in the road. That's great too. Put in the speed humps, whatever. There will be no ability under this law, under this change that Mr. Onishi's projected, to actually funnel money through one of the departments to a nonprofit to take care of a problem in your community that is outside of the county's control and authority. Is that correct, Mr. Ishida?
That is the practical effect of the bill, but I think that also, when I read Mr. Onishi's bill and I heard some of the discussion earlier, it sounded like what, and if Mr. Onishi can correct me if I'm wrong, it was creating an incentive so that the nonprofits would go through the annual grant and aid process. And he talked even about, I think, beefing up that fund too. So it was more, as I heard it, and you know, like I said, I don't vote, but the way I heard it, it's not necessarily to cut off the nonprofits, but to sort of guide them to the grant and aid process, which doesn't even require county purpose, and it doesn't require a department.
I understand that. Okay, thank you for clarifying that, because that's the point. That is a separate bill that needs to come up in front of the council to raise that amount for the next budget cycle. We're not discussing that today. That's not in front of us. What the practical effect of Mr. Onishi's bill today is to completely stop any funding through one of the departments to a nonprofit for a purpose that is outside of the county control and authority. And that's what you said is correct. The practical effect will be of this bill. So if we're trying to do something outside of it with our funds, we will not be allowed to do that. Correct?
That's correct, within the confines of this one bill.
In the confines of this bill. The other issue is a different issue that we've got to discuss. So that's why I'm asking to defeat Bill 90, leave the code the way it is. The council member has the discretion to make a presentation to the department and get their concurrence, or they'll say no, and then vet it through Corporation Council if it's something outside of the county, and then bring it to the council. And then you can decide whether or not you want to help the people of that person's district. That's the check and balances that we have. And it's perfectly clear in the code we don't need to change this. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I clarify?
Mr. Onishi.
Thank you. Mr. Ishida, again, the contingency funds comes from where? How do we get this money? Through operating budget? Right, from the mayor?
Well, it comes from our general fund revenue.
Right, okay. So, like you mentioned earlier, the grant and aid is a separate account, right? A separate funding, right? Where it can be used for whatever Ms. Ford mentioned.
Any purpose,
right? But
any legal purpose.
Yeah. But by having the contingency fund the way it's set up, did you mention like it had to be like a county related?
Yes. Well, historically, because that money ran through departments, and departments can only spend money for items in which programs that exist within that department and which are budgeted, that's where we got the whole concept of county related, because the department had to expend the money. The council's not spending the money. You're just giving the money to the department to spend, and the department can only spend for items that programs in which it oversees and which are properly budgeted.
Okay. So I just want to clarify that to the council members, is that it's not like, you know, because of the way the funding source is, it gives some little bit restrictions, not like as of like the grant and aid, where it can be so-called justified for them to get the money, and they can basically use it for whatever services like they might be providing, like for like dental care or whatever. And that non-profit, the grant and aid, that's where they would go and apply. And like as Mr. Shida mentioned, that's all I'm trying to do too, is to have these non-profits go to the right avenue, right, to the right source to get their funding, and then have the contingency funds be used for within the county use, or between improving your district on county related problems that you have. Thank you.
Mr. Onishi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we should take a break for lunch. And that's, I don't think we can, I think we should take a break.
Okay. Then we can, go ahead and call a recess until 1 p.m. Or 1:30. Yeah, I'd like to call a recess and reconvene at 1:30. Thank you.
Sorry, wouldn't cooperate with my switch. The Kylo's here.
Oh, good. So you can hear us now. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, well, we're in the end of discussion on Bill 90, and I think most council members have had a chance to speak on this at least 2 times, I believe, but our chairman reminded me that we were in the middle of a discussion when we called a recess. So I'm going to ask council members, if you have something different to add to this discussion, then I'll allow another opportunity to speak, but I'd like to move on as soon as possible. Okay, Mr. Yoshimoto. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, we have withdrawn a motion to postpone. We've withdrawn the amendment, and we're back to Bill 90, the main motion, to approve Bill 90.
Can I ask for one clarification?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to ask other council members, I could bring Lincoln up, but just to be quick. My understanding is that right now, as everything reads, nonprofits can come in on the grant and aid for purposes that are either county related or non-county related. As they come in through the contingency fund, they are required to come in for county-related public. They are required to, as I read the rules, as it is right now, they come in and they're required to come in as on a county-related public purpose. But I wasn't sure that that's what Lincoln said, so I just need, unless somebody can. Okay, so a yes or no is my understanding right now is that if we leave the law the way it is, nonprofits can come in for grant and aid, but it doesn't necessarily need to be for a county-related public purpose. Okay, but if they come in for contingency funds, what it says right now is that the contingency funds are for county-related purposes.
Oh, my God.
So therefore, they would need to be coming in for a county-related or involved on a county-related purpose.
Okay, my understanding, there is no code provision out there that covers contingency funds absent the provision in the grant and aid section of the code. My understanding is the only authority out there for contingency funds and the criteria exists within your rules. Okay? I don't know what your rules say, if there's anything in there that says county-related, but if it does, then that answers your question.
Okay, it does say that, and that's why I asked it, because I wasn't sure it was clear for me, but it says, each council member shall have direct responsibility over the district contingency relief account, and each member is allotted monies, the general, to provide for county-related projects and programs and events.
Right, and I think we have interpreted that, to me, in the past, programs or other expenses that are normally incurred by the department in the operation of their providing of the services to the general public.
So really, as the rule, if we were to stick with this rule and actually read it in its literal, straightforward manner, it would still be to provide for county-related projects and it would need to be coordinated through a county department.
That's correct.
Okay, so if we were to switch over to the way Councilmember Onishi, I wasn't clear on when you said we could still funnel money over through a department to a nonprofit to do something that's a county-related purpose? I'm just not sure.
I don't know, I don't think I said that. My
Okay, I'm
understanding-
not sure that you did either, but I'm sort of hearing it come from council members, and I think you kind of said no on that.
My understanding of Councilmember Onishi's bill, it effectively prohibits,
Funnel.
the resolution, right, that amends the council rules would effectively prevent the council from giving contingency funds monies to private nonprofits.
Even if they were funneled through an R&D program to deal with this nonprofit.
Yes, I think
Okay,
it was.
that was what I thought you said, and that was different from what I think my original or understanding had been. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I?
Thank you, Mr. Yoshino.
Okay. Okay, so, okay, so the question, maybe I can ask a question to Mr. Nishi. The question I think for everyone is, if the bill, as you have it drafted, along with the council rule amendment that's also on the agenda, if that should pass, what can we not do that we can do now in terms of providing contingency relief fund, other than the fact that we can't go through a nonprofit, because you already explained that. So in other words, as a practical effect, what happens? Because, we've heard examples of what, like Ms. Ford, I'll just use an example, said she fears that she would not be able to provide, say, hypothetically, dental care to needy people. So, can that still happen, or?
Yes. So in this situation, say for example, again, we go to like Ms. Eos project that she wants to do. She wants to do this monument at the Veterans Cemetery, which is a nonprofit, the organization. But instead of giving the money directly to them, the money goes to Parks and Rec, which purchases all the material and everything, whatever they need. And they volunteer and they do the wrecking the monument. Okay? And that way, it's more accountable, because, like, if we give the money directly to the nonprofit, like say $25,000 that they need, we wouldn't have accountability, because there's no report that comes back to us to let us know how they spend the money.
Okay, so in your scenario, it's the checks and balances lies within the county agency, because they're the ones that's expending the funds, correct?
Correct.
So we don't get into the complicated or reporting requirements that we have in the granting aid process.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So it actually kind of simplifies it.
Correct.
Ms. Willie's amendment had tried to do that, but it was a little, involved, I guess, in terms of, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, but the practical effect, customers, I think, are just worried that whatever that they can do now can no longer be, not whatever, but the scope of what they can do now, as presently written, will be restricted somehow. You're saying no.
Yes. Yeah. See, the bottom line is, the money just, the way that the bill is read and amended, it's just that it cannot go directly to the nonprofit. The contingency funds cannot go directly to the nonprofit.
Right, so you sound like you're saying you're protecting the scope of county-related purpose, right?
Correct. Yes.
Because it stays within the department, so you know it's not going to be done, it's going to be done within accountability of the department itself, right? Without having the reporting requirements that we have in the granting aid process.
Correct.
So, okay.
Oh, okay, and then can I add on a little bit? Go ahead. Okay, like another example, that like if say in R&D, like Ms. Willie wanted to do this, along this room or whatever that you're talking about. Now, R&D, you go talk to the people in the tourism, right? They work with that group, right? And then you fund the money to the tourism, and then they work with that nonprofit to get that project done.
That's contrary to what
You're saying, you know what, if I can add, okay, this kind of changes things, because my understanding was that the council on Exhibit A of the resolution,
Mr.
my,
Ishida, we haven't, we table,
okay.
yeah, the resolution is in
My
it's a bill.
My understanding of what was occurring was the council was attempting to prohibit this money from being expended in any way such that that money would go to the nonprofits. But what I'm hearing now from Councilmember Onishi is he's saying, no, he just doesn't want the council giving the money directly to the nonprofit, but he can give it to the department, and the department can then spend it on the nonprofit. Is that what I'm hearing?
You can spend it, the department spends the money to help the nonprofit. The check doesn't go directly from the department to the nonprofit. So like, I give you council money, you give it to the school. It's like, I give you the money, you purchase the stuff for the school, for that partnership on that program.
But whatever you folks choose to do, just make the record real clear, make the verbiage in the bill, or whatever, very clear what you want to do, because I was confused. I thought this was an effort to prohibit contingency funds from being expended on behalf of any nonprofit. So I guess I stand corrected. That was my impression of what we were seeking, at least you were proposing. So that just needs to be cleaned up.
Okay, so what I'm understanding and what I just heard was that, okay, so the example, Councilmember Onishi, that you made, I just want to clarify that, is that, okay, say R&D, and we'll talk about, say, Spencer House and this building capacity with all these nonprofits. And the Hawaii Tourism, you give the money to Hawaii Tourism, but they cannot give money to the nonprofit, but they can provide either services or help them with, like if they would rent a space there to help with the program and stuff like that. That's what you're talking about, not being able to give money directly to them, but help to provide either materials or, helping with rent if they're there, that kind of thing, like building a partnership with the county department that you're going to, and then helping them in ways other than giving them cash, right? Okay.
No, just a point of, I'm so confused. I have no clue where we are right now. I'm just so confused. This is just one mistake.
Okay, so in light of the fact that I think, we've gone through this over and over, but we're still kind of not clear where we want to go, I move to postpone, subject to call.
Second.
It was moved to postpone by Mr. Yoshimoto, second by Mr. Kern. Any discussion on the postponement? Ms. Bliss.
Thank you. Again, I am going to support a postponement here, but frankly, what I'm hearing, how do I say this? I'm hearing a lot of statements that are confusing the council members as to what the reality is going to be if this bill passes. And I don't think we should leave this room until we're all on the same page, and we are not all on the same page. Mr. Onishi keeps talking about this county thing, and he's only considering events or programs or projects that will be inside the county. And for that reason, I cannot support a postponement. We need to be, I know this is very difficult for all of us, but we've got to be on the same page, the same understanding before we walk out of this room. Thank you.
Madam Chair? Sorry. If we're going to do that, then we should just send it back to committee. This has already gone through committee. We've already had discussion. We've already had committee-like discussion here on the council. I think we should just step away from it or send it back to committee. Step away from it for a minute through the postponement or send it back to committee. But it's clear, like right now, right here, this isn't working. I think doing the same thing over and over again isn't going to help. Let's do one or the other. I think we could bring it back to council, postpone it, bring it back to council, and probably get through it in the normal course of discussion that we have, and any questions that we may have that we need, we could talk to Mr. Ishida in the meantime on our own and figure that out. So I support the postponement.
Anybody else? Mr. Waha?
Either way, thank you, Madam Chair. Either way we do it, I do want to be able to understand it, because I understand on the postponement, the reason why we're doing the postponement is so we can discuss it further on a later date. And my understanding is that, of course, we need to have this further discussion. So whether or not we do it on a later date or now, for me, it matters that we do have the discussion. So I still look, when I look at the agenda, it looks like we can take care of it today. Then that's just my opinion. I know we're in a rush, but I feel like we can take care of it now, and that's the discussion we're trying to have. So I will be turning down the postponement, and that's the reason why, because whether we have it later or now, for me it doesn't matter. What matters is that we do have the discussion, and that's where I stand. Thank you.
Ms. Lilly?
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Iligan. I'm not sure, unless I were to discuss it with one of you outside of here, that I wouldn't come back to the same place I am right now, okay? So, I understand the taking the break idea and the stepping back bit, but I'm not sure that we're not going to go off in the same thing and not sort of, if it's not clear what the impact will be if it passes, then maybe it should be amended, or we just take a vote and see how it comes out right now. I would just go ahead, because I feel I will come back to the same position I'm in. So I just want to support what Councilmember Iligan said.
And Ms. Yoshimura?
Okay, the reason I made the postponement is because in listening to everyone, I think the one thing that is clear is that it's not clear to everybody else. So each person has a different idea or understanding as to the effect of passing this or not passing this, right? Well, not passing it, we know what's going to happen. We're just going to go with what as is, but initially, right? So I'm okay with not doing the postponement so long as council members are comfortable that they know everything they need to know to vote. Because I'm always of the opinion that if you don't have enough information, how can you make an informed decision? But if after listening to everyone here, if you want to go ahead and like you said, we could just vote it up and see what happens. We could vote it down, and we know what's going to happen when we vote it down, right? So I'm okay. I just thought that if people have time to collect their thoughts, read things over again privately. I'm more of a person that likes to read things just by myself without the noise and the talking, because no offense, Ms. Ford, you're not making noise, but no, but that's just how I focus better that way. But this valid point, we kind of talked this one over and over. We walked through the forest, and I think we're walking in circles. But if you feel like, Ms. Willie, that if you're ready to vote, then I'm okay with that too, because I know what my vote would be if I called upon today. It's just that my comfort level needs to be at a certain point, and it's not there. But I will, with the other council members as well.
Mr. Onishi?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. From the start, when I explained about how this would work as committees, I was very consistent till now. I've been consistent, and I explained to you guys how many times how the money could be allocated for your projects, working with a nonprofit. Okay, I understand, but I just want to make it clear. But then also, I think you folks need to go look at the council rules, okay, especially at number 3A. You guys need to really look at that, okay, on your council, and it's in here. It's in your, on your board, look in front of it and read it, and it's going to really state what the funds can be for. So, I guess, it can go either way. We can either vote it up or down now, because then I'm going to be very, like a watchdog on 3A, okay? And so, it's up to you guys. We can go up or down now, or we can do a postponement, but I don't see why we need more, because like I said, I explained everything, how it will be, and it's been consistent from committee to council, so I don't see no confusion. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just be real quick, point of inquiry. If we could do a recess in just a 5 minute, I'm just wondering where that document Councilmember Nishi's talking about.
I think he's referring to the code.
That just for clarification, that would be underneath the reso, underneath the rule change, the 3A. Under the reso of,
Inside.
that we should just postpone.
If you don't mind, I would just like to say something before we vote on whether to postpone this or not. And that is that I know some of the council members have suggested that we need to understand what would be the ramifications of passing this bill. So I think what we already need to understand before that is how the contingency funds are used. So if this is postponed, I would suggest that we all take a look at the current rule regarding the use of council contingency funds, the code, and maybe even look back into the legislative records of what kinds of projects have been successfully accomplished both ways, just to see what the current status of the use of council contingency funds is. That would just be my last comment on the vote to postpone.
On the motion to postpone, Ms. Ford. On the motion to postpone, Ms. Ford.
No.
Mr. Lagat.
No.
Mr. Kanoha. Mr. Kern.
Aye.
Mr. Onishi. Ms. Poindexter.
Aye.
Ms. Willie. Ms. Willie. Mr. Ishimoto.
Aye.
Chair Iya.
Aye.
Mr. Onishi. Mr. Onishi.
Thank you.
Chair Iya, you have 6 ayes.
Okay, the motion to postpone carries. And I think that was going to be to the call of the chair.
Thank you.
I just read it.
Madam Chair, well, we'd have to read it in and postpone it on the other one.
So, but before other council members make decisions for myself, because this is my resolution, I'll withdraw this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Resolution 138-13 is withdrawn. Thank you. Okay, Madam Chair, Madam Clerk.